Have you ever wondered why the Great Pyramids of Giza were actually built as tombs for cats? Well, hold on to your history books, because today we uncover 10 incredible facts that didn't make it into your history textbooks. From ancient Egyptian mummies to the dastardly deeds of Robin Hood, these jaw-dropping revelations will have you questioning everything you thought you knew about the past. So sit back, grab your thinking cap, and prepare to be amazed by the incredible truth. Number 10. Cleopatra, the last active ruler of the Ptolemaic Kingdom of Egypt. Famously died by committing suicide rather than being captured by the invading forces of Rome. But did you know that her preferred method of self-inflicted demise was by means of a venomous snakebite? That's right. Instead of going out in a blaze of glory, Cleopatra chose to let a poisonous serpent do the dirty work, bringing an end to her life and the Ptolemaic dynasty. Talk about a slithering way to go. But why did she take this particular method of ending her own life? According to legend, Cleopatra had a particular fondness for snakes, even keeping an assortment of them as pets. She was also well aware of the fact that the venomous bites of certain species could be fatal. So when the time came to say goodbye, she opted for a quick and painless death by snakebite. It's not exactly the most conventional method of committing suicide, but hey, who are we to judge? No. 9. Emperor Shah Jahan, the man behind the construction of the Taj Mahal, intended the mausoleum to be the final resting place for both him and his beloved wife, Mumtaz Mahal. However, upon his death in 1666, he was buried alongside his wife against her wishes. You see, Mumtaz Mahal had requested that she and her husband be separated in death as they had been in life, but with each having their own distinct chambers within the Taj. Unfortunately, Shah Jahan's own narcissistic tendencies got the better of him, and he decided that he wanted to be buried next to his one true love. Despite her wishes, this is a truly bizarre twist in the tale of one of history's most famous couples. And it just goes to show that even the greatest monuments can have a dark side. No. 8. Christopher Columbus, the famed Italian explorer, is credited with being the first European to reach the Americas in 1492. But did you know that he was actually the first person from Europe to set foot on continental land? In fact, centuries before Columbus arrived, Irish monks had established a settlement in Newfoundland, Canada around the year 1000 AD, led by the legendary Viking explorer Eric the Red. These intrepid explorers established a small community on the coast of North America, complete with its own church and dwellings. However, the settlement was short-lived, and the Irish monks eventually abandoned their North American outpost, turning to Europe. This unexpected bit of history challenges the commonly held belief that Europeans had no knowledge of the Americas prior to Columbus' arrival, and raises questions about what might have been if the settlement had been more successful. 7. Julius Caesar, the mighty Roman general and statesman, played a pivotal role in the events that led to the fall of the Roman Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. But did you know that he was actually stabbed to death by members of the Roman Senate? Yep, you heard that right. It's on the Ides of March in 44 BC. A group of senators led by Gaius Cassius and Marcus Junius Brutus confronted Caesar in the Senate and stabbed him over 20 times. Talk about a stabbing. But why did these senators want Caesar dead? They believed that Caesar's growing power and popularity were a threat to the Roman Republic and its traditional way of life. By assassinating Caesar, they hoped to restore the balance of power and prevent Rome from becoming an oppressive dictatorship. However, their plan ultimately failed, and Caesar's death only hastened the demise of the Republic and the rise of the Roman Empire. No. 6. Vikings, those fearsome Scandinavian warriors, were known for their brutal raids on coastal settlements in Europe and beyond. But did you know that they were also responsible for the first recorded instance of a military siege in history? In 860 AD, a band of Vikings led by the legendary Ivar the Boneless laid siege to the Anglo-Saxon city of Northumbria. Their objective was simple: to plunder the city's wealth and resources. But they soon found that Northumbria was well defended, and taking the city would not be easy. The Vikings responded by digging a massive trench around the city walls and then filling it with water, effectively surrounding the city with a moat. This tactic, known as a circumvallation, is considered to be the first of its kind in military history, and it allowed the Vikings to lay a successful siege to the city. Eventually, the defenders of Northumbria ran out of supplies, and the city fell to the Vikings, who made off with a huge haul of treasure and booty. Talk about a successful siege. 5 ancient Thebes once assembled an elite military force known as the Theban Legion, consisting of 150 pairs of gay male lovers. These lovers went undefeated in war, conquering neighboring cities and expanding Thebes' territory. But their success on the battlefield was short-lived. After conquering the city of Thera, the Theban Legion was forced to disband due to pressure from conservative elements within Theban society. However, their legacy lived on in the form of a popular legend that celebrated their bravery and military prowess. In fact, the story of the Theban Legion became a staple of Greek literature, poets and playwrights waxing poetic about the heroic deeds of these brave soldiers and their unwavering commitment to each other. But despite their fame and legend, the Theban Legion was a relatively obscure footnote in actual history. In fact, their existence is known solely from a single ancient text, the Thebaid of Statius, a Roman poet who lived several centuries after the legion's supposed existence. As a result, many historians believe that the Theban Legion may have been little more than a mythical creation, designed to celebrate the military prowess of Theban society, while also reinforcing traditional gender roles and norms. Nevertheless, the story of the Theban Legion continues to capture the imagination of audiences today, inspiring works of art, literature, and film. Number 4. The Great Wall of China, one of the world's most iconic landmarks, was not built to keep out Mongol invaders as popularly believed, but rather to regulate trade and immigration. While the Mongols did use the wall as a defensive structure during their invasions of China in the 13th century, it was originally constructed over a millennium earlier for a completely different purpose. During the Ming Dynasty, the Chinese government sought to control the flow of people and goods into and out of the empire. As such, they began constructing a series of fortifications and checkpoints along the northern borders of their territory. These measures were designed to regulate trade and immigration, as well as to protect China from nomadic tribes that lived beyond the wall. However, when the Mongols invaded under the leadership of Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, they used the wall as a convenient defensive structure to fortify their positions against the Chinese. Despite its original purpose, the Great Wall of China remains one of the most recognizable symbols of China's rich history and cultural heritage. 3. Roman gladiators. The fierce warriors of the Roman Empire's popular entertainment were not necessarily slaves or prisoners of war as commonly assumed, but often highly skilled professionals who were paid handsomely for their services. In fact, many gladiators were volunteers who chose to participate in the deadly sport for the promise of fame, fortune, and perhaps even immortality. The training of gladiators was a rigorous process that required discipline, strength, and endurance. They were taught how to fight with various weapons and defend themselves against different types of opponents. With the advent of the Roman Empire, gladiatorial combat became a popular form of entertainment, and the demand for these warriors grew. As a result, professional gladiator schools, or Ludus gladiatorius, began to emerge, where aspiring gladiators could train and hone their skills. The best gladiators became celebrities of the Roman world with their own fan clubs and merchandise. They were revered by the crowds, and some even achieved legendary status. However, the life of a gladiator was not without its dangers. The odds were stacked against them, and the risk of injury or death was always present. Despite the risks, gladiatorial combat remained a popular form of entertainment throughout the Roman Empire, and the tradition continued for centuries. Number 2. In 1095, Pope Urban II called for the First Crusade, a holy war to reclaim Jerusalem from the control of Muslim forces. However, the Crusaders' journey to the Holy Land was fraught with peril, and the initial attempt to seize Jerusalem in 1099 ended in disaster. Undeterred, the Crusaders regrouped and returned to Europe to build up their forces. They finally succeeded in capturing Jerusalem in 1187, establishing the Kingdom of Jerusalem. But their victory was short-lived. In 1291, the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt conquered Jerusalem, ending the Crusader state's presence in the Holy Land. However, the Crusades had a lasting impact on the relationship between Christianity and Islam, setting the stage for centuries of conflict and misunderstanding. Number 1. Robin Hood, the legendary outlaw and folk hero of English folklore, is said to have robbed from the rich and given to the poor. However, recent historical research suggests that he may have been a real person who lived during the reign of King John in the 12th century. According to some accounts, Robin Hood was an aristocrat who was stripped of his title and lands. which would explain his motivation for robbing from the wealthy nobility. However, others argue that he was a commoner who was simply trying to survive in a time of great economic disparity. What's more, there is evidence that Robin Hood was part of a larger network of outlaws and rebels who opposed King John's oppressive rule. These so-called outlaws were often motivated by a desire for social justice and a hatred of injustice, which is reflected in the popular Robin Hood legend. However, despite the enduring popularity of the Robin Hood legend, there is little historical evidence to support the claim that he was a real person. Most of what we know about him comes from medieval ballads and tales, which were often embellished and exaggerated for dramatic effect. Nevertheless, the story of Robin Hood continues to capture the imagination of audiences today, inspiring countless books, films, and television shows. And who knows, maybe there's a grain of truth hidden somewhere in the legend. That's all for today, folks. We hope you enjoyed learning these amazing facts that didn't quite make it into your history books. If you want to learn more about incredible historical events, stay tuned for more videos like these. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.